Illia Topuria versus Volkanovski might be one of the most well-rounded featherweight fights that we have seen in a long time. Is it going to be the passing of the torch, or is Volkanovski going to continue his reign of terror and being the featherweight GOAT? In my personal opinion, I don't see Volkanovski taking over, as Illia Topuria is this next generation of featherweights. And as such a young talent, he does have this developing story of seeing Volk constantly as the featherweight champ. And we've seen that before with these long reigning champions, that this third generation, the generation that is always coming up against the champion, they are able to game plan in a certain way because they have seen this champion for years on end. If you are Ilya's corner and you are watching film on Volk, the big glaring issue of Volk is inside boxing. Inside boxing against Max Holloway, inside boxing against Korean Zombie has shown a tiny bit of issues against Volk and has had glimpses of knockdowns and getting rocked from the inside boxing territory. We see that with Max Holloway. We also see that with Islam, who isn't a predominant striker compared to what Ilya is. And Ilya, what he is the inside boxing king. Now, what do I mean by king? What I mean is he follows the game plans of what an inside boxer is to a perfect T. I think this might be a stylistic nightmare for Volk, and let me explain why. In Illia Topuria, when he is inside boxing, he focuses on all two levels, the body and the head, and you will see combinations. He is a very big combo striker from body to head. We see that in the finish against Jai Herbert. We see that in the finish against Damon Jackson, where he hits body first, or he'll hit head first, then to the body, and then finishes the fight with the ultimate overhand or the cross that he does land on both Jai Herbert and Damon Jackson. Now, those two fights are very big fights for Ilya when it does come to trying to know what inside boxing is with Ilya. But the big glaring issue is how tall Damon Jackson and Jai Herbert are. We do see when it is Josh Emmett, when it is Bryce Mitchell, people who are to the height of Ilya, those looping punches turn into straight punches. And that is a perfect tell to let you know that Ilya's IQ is out of the charts when it does come to inside boxing. We do see that in the Bryce Mitchell fight, where a lot of the combos, they are going body head, but now they're straight punches instead of the looping overhands to try to get over the long reach of guys like Jai Herbert and Damon Jackson. With guys that are his height, and with guys like Volk, who is going to be around the same height as Ilya, with these guys and their heights, both of them around 5'7", 5'6", we do see that against taller fighters, they're more accustomed to that taller stature. This is going to be the first time in Volk since, I want to say, Brian Ortega, that he's had a guy that has been somewhat to his height. They usually are so used to looping overhands, they're so used to looping over the certain shoulder, that now that they're against a guy that it's their height, they have to straighten their punches. But Ilya's most recent fight against Josh Emmett was against a guy who was his height, and you saw that is a very prominent game plan that he will still inside box against these shorter guys, but will now just straighten his punches instead of loop them. And I think that Josh Emmett fight will show sort of to what the game plan is for Illia Topuria, which is get on the inside and possibly take Volk's head off. Ilya is not the smartest when it does come to cockiness. He is very cocky, and I can see him think that he could run through Volk and try to inside box him instantly. I think it needs to take a little bit more time, get Ilya's reads going before he can start inside boxing, and it can be successful. Volk is not a good guy to inside box with because he does have issues and flaws to leaving his chin a tiny bit in the air or leaving his hands a little bit too low. You see Volk when he does a lot of switch combos, which means while punching he is switching stances, and you see him get caught a lot when people, instead of backing up to Volk's pressure, will face it head on. And Ilya is a guy that you see a lot where he will do a lot of step feints and he will pretend like he's jumping in to then lure out a certain combo so that he could let out his own combo. Ilya is really good at lurking people and letting them come into what Ilya is going to end up throwing. You see that in the fight with Josh Emmett, where he will engage to anything Josh Emmett throws before he does do his step fades. He will step and wait until Josh Emmett does throw a punch or throw a combination, will back up almost like a step back, then throw. He does that all the time against Josh Emmett. He does it a lot against Bryce Mitchell as well, where he will kind of wait until they throw something, or will give them a tell that they're about to throw something, and then step back and then fire off. And I could see Volk trying to do one of his switch stance combos, and instead of Illia worrying about backing up, he will end up facing pressure. And you do see Volk is in a lot of trouble when someone does face pressure when he is in the middle of throwing combos. In terms of inside boxing, Illia's stance is never wavered. It's never having an issue. He is not overthrowing. He is not jumping. He is not having an issue with his footing. His stance will stay perfect. He does not overthrow. Everything comes perfectly. Everything comes with the hook and cross. And I think it's perfect to look at the Josh Emmett fight, because Volk is sort of the same height as Josh Emmett. Now, he doesn't fight like Josh Emmett, but with the same height, you can kind of see how Illia does treat the sort of same height fighters, because Illia is only 5'7". In the featherweight division, you have guys like Yair, you have guys like Calvin Kattar, you have guys like Bryce Mitchell, guys like Max Holloway, who is 5'11", 6 foot, who will overtop guys like Illia, guys like Volk, and now they're finally facing each other who are the same height. And you see that Illia in the Josh Emmett fight also does not throw out overthrowing punches. He does not throw out punches that gets his footing wrong. He is still picture perfect with his stance. Now, one very big if, because I do think this fight is going to be super close. I do think this is going to be one of the better fights of the year already, even though it's just February. Me and Andy have been going back and forth of who we think wins it. I chose Illia, he chose Volk. You can check why Andy chose Volk in his breakdown video that is already released. This is my reasoning. Volk is at the age where the chin is a little bit out of the way. And you see the fact that Islam, who is a 155er, don't get me wrong, the fact that he was able to catch Volk, I think that Volk is just a tad bit slower than what he is. And then on top of that, there's so many question marks of what he is mentally. Although Illia is very cocky, you kind of need that delusion to be a world champion. The delusion of having a documentary of how you're already winning the title called Road to the Title, that is insane cockiness and his insane confidence. He has in his Instagram bio already how he's an undefeated featherweight champion. Volk doesn't really have that sort of wavering confidence that we are seeing. Obviously, he's having the confidence saying, I'm going to beat Illia, but then he's talking about the Islam fight and how he wasn't really prepared and how it did his head in, how he drank every day before the Islam fight. There's so many question marks of how is it when you are at the top of the hill for so long. You see so many guys who start drifting off when they are at the top of the hill. We saw it with John Jones. His was more legally. He kind of was just a wild man. We saw with Israel where he kind of just lost passion for the sport, and now he's having this break. What is going on with Volk mentally? And that is my big wavering question mark, and that is why I think Illia can win. Because when you have someone who is so cocky and so skilled, when you go up against a guy who is to the same skill level but a tiny bit older, just came off a knockout, and has mental question marks all over, I think Illia can win this based off who wants it more. And I think Illia has that. And this is a very big if, and this is if Illia is winning this fight and Volk hasn't been put away yet. You will see Illia in the 5th round have the IQ and have the composure to know that he is winning. What do I mean by that? In the 5th round against Josh Emmett was wailing overhand, was wailing power punches, trying to get a finish. And you will see Illia in that fight circle around the octagon, throw his jab out, and then eventually got a takedown to Josh Emmett's pressure, because he knows that he's winning the fight. He doesn't need to impress anyone. He is solely there to win. Illia is by all means not a boring fighter. But when he kind of realized that he couldn't get Josh Emmett out of there, he's too tough for his own good, He didn't want to risk the fact that Josh Emmett has immense power. So he got the takedown and just punished him for that overthrowing and the overhands and all that. But before the takedown, he was throwing out jabs, he was circling. He wasn't really trying to knock out Josh Emmett anymore. And that might be a case with Illia versus Volk. Now, this fight is super close. This fight can end super early on both sides. This fight can go to a decision. This fight is one of the closest featherweight fights that we're going to see. There's really no chance of predicting this perfectly, but we do see an overconfidence in Illia that could be a flaw in this fight. Illia against Jai Herbert was very confident in his inside boxing that it got him caught, and we saw that in the head kick knockdown where Jai Herbert almost finished the fight, because Illia can sometimes be so overconfident with his offense that he does have defensive maneuvers that aren't very IQ worthy. They aren't very smart. They're not very intelligent to do in the fight, and that is one of the bigger issues that I have with Illia, and that's why this fight is very close to me and Andy's, because Illia has these defensive issues because of how confident he is in his striking. He is such a confident guy that he kind of thinks he's going to bulldoze through everyone. So you can kind of see that in his fights where he will almost bully guys and will be a sort of big presence, even though he's 5'7", be a big presence in that octagon, being this glamorous, being this perfect, picture perfect punching, that he does get caught sometimes. Another issue that I had with picking Illia, I do think Illia does win this fight, but one of my bigger flaws, other than the overconfidence, is that there is still a lot of question marks with him. We know what we're going to see from Volk. At this rate, we're going to see the featherweight champion fight and defend his title again. He has fought Max Holloway 3 times. He has fought Korean Zombie, Brian Ortega, Chad Mendez, Islam to a very close decision. But Illia's really big fight, he's only had 2 maybe, which is Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell, if you want to count that one. Because Bryce Mitchell, don't get me wrong, is a very good featherweight. He is not to the level of Volk. Josh Emmett is a very, very good featherweight, but he's not to the level of Volk. So there's a lot of question marks to how Illia does respond with adversity, how Illia responds to a very talented fighter coming forward and not respecting him, not giving him his flowers. He's there to brawl. What if Volk is there to brawl, wrestle, outstrike him, out-tech him? How is Illia going to respond to that? We just don't know how Illia is when it does come to adversity, which is a big issue that I have. Volk, we've seen it against Max Holloway when he got knocked down twice in the second fight, when he had a razor close 3rd and 4th round in the first fight. Volk knows how to handle adversity. Volk knows what to do when someone is in front of you and giving you an actual fight. Illia doesn't have that, which makes this fight razor close in my opinion. My third and final flaw that I do see with Illia that can prevail for Volk is the leg kicks. Josh Emmett at the start of the fight had a very high success rate with the leg kicks, and Illia doesn't really check them. He kind of lifts his knee sometimes, or he sometimes just tries to back away and he isn't there. But eventually he got Josh Emmett hurt. He got Josh Emmett trying to box with him. So the leg kick game plan was kind of out of the window. Volk is a very disciplined fighter. He will attack the leg. He will listen to his coaches in the 3rd, 4th, 5th. Even if he's hurt, he will still attack legs. And so I do see a world where Volk can leg kick Illia into a point where Illia cannot throw the same power punches as Volk, and we can get a brawl that actually ends up on Volk's side instead of Illia's. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go with the younger guy. I'm going to go with the more powerful guy. And I'm definitely going to go with the guy that his game plan and what has brought him to the dance is the same reason why Volk has had issues at the dance. Inside boxing might be the reason why Illia wins this fight. We see so many issues with Volk in the past with inside boxing that it's not to a point where you can train to get it better. Volk might have just a tendency and a body memory that Illia can exploit. and I see that happening with the inside boxing. I'm going Illia in this matchup based off that. Illia is the younger guy. Volk has a lot of questions as to where his motivation is. Volk has a lot of questions to how his chin is, and Volk has shown glimpses of issues when it does come to inside boxing. Guys, let me know who you think you have in this matchup. If you want to hear why Andy thinks Volk will beat Illia, look at the most recent video. Andy perfectly explains why he thinks Volk beats Illia. Let us know what you got in the comments. This is a super close featherweight fight, so we want to hear what you guys say. But it's been Santi. It's been Studs.